Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Unpack Your Shit, where Helga and I read a book and dig into the deep topics, chase them down various rabbit holes, and touch all of their little toe beans. I'm Kal, I'm joined, as always, by the lovely, the magnanimous, the larger-than-life Helga. Welcome.
Hi. I'm going to, I can't wait until we can fight again, just so you know.
Honestly, one of my favorite things about doing this show with you is me getting to alter the intro or do little things that you don't know I'm going to do, and just to kind of poke at you. It's my favorite. All right, so
I brought this cup just for you.
Oh, that's nice. I like that one. You do in fact define naughty, so I can see that. So this is part 3 of The Art of Asking. So I'll say this is a rough 100-ish pages for me. There were a couple really tough subjects and a couple of sort of, as I think you kind of alluded to, there's a lot of sort of the summation of things in this, but there's a lot of really rough, not just for me personally, but just in general. There's some rough subjects, so I'm looking forward to seeing what all we kind of hit on and dive into. So
yeah. And really, this last 100 pages is why I really enjoy this book, is because the first 2 sections we went over is a lot of the story building to where you get attached to why these are the lessons that come out of it and everything else like that. And there's even some ownership of her own failings in here. There's definitely some dismissal too. I don't know if you caught some of that. There's definitely where you see the author Amanda Palmer at one point is well, but this is how I function, and people are maybe not.
And she actually goes through a couple of the way she functions, but you have to still own that, and that's part of that. Yeah. All right, so let's dive in. I think so. Hey guys, we made a list of the things we had to cover tonight. We're prepared. Whoa. We did it literally 2 minutes ago, so don't get too excited. All right, okay, you got the first one. Let's see what we got.
Okay, so just to give everybody a recap real quick, if you're tuning in the first time, we're going over Amanda Palmer's The Art of Asking, because both Kal and I are emotional fuckwits most of the time, and so we're emotional fuckwits together while we're unpacking our shit, and we're going through a series of books, and so tonight we're going to finish this one up, and this one's really about getting over yourself and starting to ask for things and what the judgments are around behind it. In this last section of the book, we're going to look at the culmination of all the stories from the first part. Highly recommend reading this book. Amanda Palmer is a very charged character though, so just hang on for that ride, because there's a couple things that even I, as somebody that's a little existential and weird and an artist, I'm kind of jackass. But where we're going to start tonight is actually my favorite part of this book, is take the fucking donut. And this is the first big lesson, or the first big roundup of stories that she goes through. And she's talking about the fact that in this time, she uses the idea of the starving writer that's sequestered away from everybody and their brother, and suffering through writing a manuscript. And she outs another writer, saying that one of the friends every day would come to his little cabin and bring donuts. And it was a nice little thing that his friend was doing. But there's the cultural idea that you have to be going through all this struggle to be worthy of your art. And the thing that stuck out with this book for me, and this is the main lesson that I took away, is take the donut. You don't have to reject the little things while you're going through a struggle or you're working on a project or anything else like that. Take the donut. You don't have to reject that to then be worthy to have fans. It's okay for people to help take care of you in the process. So going to my first little tab of the night. If I can flip my page. This is also the point where she introduces the idea that, and this amusingly enough goes back to The Anatomy of Peace, which was our first book, of us putting ourselves in boxes. And this is the too much or not enough of, if I ask for help, I'm not enough. If I ask for help, I'm too, I'm weak. Right. And so this is the take the donut. It doesn't make you weak to accept help from others from an outside source. And this is the first big lesson that you have to have in asking for something, is you have to get over your own ego to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and So actually, I like to connect this part to the idea of, and she brings it up a couple of times. So it's super slow not paying attention about the it doesn't hurt enough yet idea of. So there, from the first part, there's a story about a farmer and a dog, and then dog sitting on a nail, and the farmer's like, well, I'm not going to go drag him off. Hook it off when it hurts enough.
Mm-hmm.
This ties into that is the idea that you don't have to suffer, you don't have to hurt, you don't have to not do a thing or take that time off. And I think that this is really important advice for anybody who's in a professional, like executive environment who works too hard, myself included. Take a day off. Take that extra long lunch break. Take that 5 minutes. Use your resources. Find people that can help you. You don't have to do things alone. And that's a hard thing for most of us, people who are organizers within the SCA and with their own lives who want to have help. But yeah, you don't suffer, I think.
Well, it's don't create unneeded suffrage for like a fictitious idea. Like you don't have to like. We tend to, and I think it's one of those really weird things. It's like the human condition of we put ourselves on the hero arc, and the hero arc, you must suffer to then become worthy of whatever it is. And we bastardize that into, in every hero's arc, in all the books and all the weird stories that we all jerk off to and everything else like that, there's always side characters. Like Frodo would have never gotten there with Sam. And when he rejects Sam, he actually starts failing. Sam's his donut. Take the donut. Sam goes with you. And at that point in time, it's probably take the potato. But that's one of the things is we get this weird idea in our heads that we must trek through and do all of our art, all of our struggles, everything else like that alone. Otherwise, we are not the hero of the story. No, fuck that. Take your whole team with you. Like, bring the box of donuts, everything else like that. Create some happiness around the work.
Right. And so, yeah, so looking at, I know the thing I've seen most frequently is people wanting to reinvent the wheel on A&S things. So I want to teach a class on like my current thing that I'm working on is bowstrings. Well, I'm not gonna if I can go find somebody else's class on bowstrings, I'm gonna go find their class on bowstrings and then just teach their information, because why am I gonna go recreate that wheel when it's already been done? I'm gonna properly credit those people and say, hey, look, this is such and such information. This is where I got this from, whatever. But I'm conveying it. There's no reason for me to have to suffer through doing the same work. I can then take that work and improve upon it and make it better. Yeah. That's a good point, and I think that's a. So you brought up the whole hero arc thing and the idea of suffering. I should not. Oh, by the way, I have to bring this up. You can't see it, but there's a highlighter here because I actually used a highlighter this time. Last time.
You highlighted your book. Some people are gonna just lose their shit on the
internet. I know. No, it was painful. The first one for me was painful, but I was like, okay, I'm just doing this. It's fine. It's for the show.
No, it's my personal copies have highlighter marks all over them. All right, so do we want to actually discuss how this applies in the SCA, or? Okay, so take the donut in the SCA is like the asking for help and or asking, like, when we start taking the donut, we start accepting, like, especially when we start fighting, we're actually given the opportunity to do this all the time. Loaner gear, when people are willing to help buy a helmet, crowdsourcing armor gear, somebody willing to paint your shields, like stuff like it's little things like that within the SCA that we see. And I'm using it as a fighter context because I'm a fighter brained asshole. But like we also see these other things that when we go on to our SCA arc, we stop asking. So as newcomers, we come in and we ask very easily, or we tend to ask openly, or the offers are made. So there's a lot of donuts thrown at us as newcomers, like, hey, I have an extra ratty tunic, or I have this old set of shoes, or anything else like that. But as we get into that idea of creating our own SCA heroes arc, we tend to stop asking or stop seeing the given offers. We forget to ask for trades. We forget to just reach out to the community itself and start asking hey, I'm trying to learn how to do this thing. How do I do this? Instead, we start tripping on our own ego, thinking we must grind through and figure it out ourselves, when there's actually a huge pool of knowledge out there and we don't really have to. All we have to do is fucking ask for the donut.
And it may not, to further analogy, it may not be the right flavor. It may not be the one you exactly wanted, but at least you're going to get something, and at least you're going to get somewhere further along the road than you were. You may still have to make some effort. You may have to take a couple donuts and mush it together to make the donut you wanted. But yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And anybody in fighters, I think it happens a lot because you see that with Loner Armor and things like that so much that people or if somebody blows a knee out at a big war, and I can't fight now. Oh no, somebody around here has the right tools to fix this, or has an extra set or whatever. You just got to ask.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing is later saying, "Oh man, I couldn't fight today because such and such," and then some dude like Thorfinn slaps you in the back of the head and goes, "I had 3 sets of knees in my bag. Why didn't you say something?"
Yeah. And that's actually really kind of the takeaway I got from the ask for the donut, or like take the fucking donut, is that by asking, you then stop the next side of it, which is shame.
Right.
When somebody's like, when you're like, man, I'm so hungry, and everybody's like, why the fuck didn't you say something? Like, because if you had said something, if you had asked, if you had talked to the crowd or you talked to your friends, they probably would have been able to solve your problem, and they would have done so joyfully, because that's a way that they can serve and help and go from there. So,
yep, that's all great points. All right, so I think 175. You had something on?
175.
That may tie into 173 there. So.
Oh yeah, it was 175 through one. It's almost that entire. It's 182 is where you had your mark.
Yeah.
So, and that's really the culmination of it. I think we covered that pretty good. Unless you have more.
No, I think yeah, it's literally, and that's I think if we toss out the rest of the book and say, look at that one point, that is literally the idea around asking. So we've covered a whole lot of other stuff in this because she goes off on tangents and whatever, but I think it's important and all sort of builds the idea of asking and the idea around the shame you kind of touched on. But that defines the art of asking, the idea around asking. Just one, be willing to ask, but one, be willing to take the offer.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of things that are in this section that clarify some of those too.
Mm-hmm.
So the next point I had was actually ties into that in the idea of letting people help you is not only useful to you, it is actually a gift to them. So people who do things that are service-minded people, or people that like teaching, or people that like helping, that's something they enjoy. And so in the book, she has or in her life rather, she has sort of her mentor, her Obi-Wan, named Anthony, who has Anthony has a shit time in this whole section dealing with, so sort of trigger warning here. There's cancer stuff in this. There's a whole lot of medical things with him, and just some really shitty times, which hit me personally because of stuff I've dealt with in this last few years with Amber's mom and things. But so Anthony's whole thing is he's a helper. He wants to help her, and throughout his entire sort of cancer thing, one of the ways he distracts himself is by helping her with relationship advice, with career advice, with sort of just her. He's her therapist, for lack of a better term. But the phrase is he wants to help you and you let him help. That's the gift. So not only is he giving a gift to her, but her actually letting him is a gift to him. Thoughts?
No, I actually agree with that. Like,
I mic dropped and walked away on that. Sorry.
Mic dropped it right there. I think you covered it just fine. Like,
cool. Yeah, in this game, we have to remember that. So when people offer to help with whatever the thing is, remember they're offering to help because they want to. Either, especially, and I think you and I can both look at the fighter thing as always, is we as fighters want to help new fighters because we want to hit new people.
At some point, you stop asking for the donuts and you start providing the donuts, and then it's a mutual exchange.
Right. Yes, I'm giving you armor so I can hit you. This is not for your benefit.
I mean, for reals. I feel like that about my square, where he was like, I don't have a helmet that fits. I'm like, but I do.
Yeah, like, I will get you one. Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right. 201, that's you.
201. So we're gonna roll into more about, so this all builds on Take the Donut. But also we're gonna talk about a bunch of that stuff. So one of the things that she does is she gets invited to speak at Microsoft.
Right.
And she's freaking out, and she calls her mom, who's a programmer, to talk to her about it, and her mom actually tells her, like, look, when you were 13, you said I wasn't an artist. And to boil it all down, her mom very politely is kind of like, reality check, I am. People just don't get to see my art. Like, just because people don't get to see my art doesn't make me less of an artist. So don't take away my validity. And one of the things that really stuck out for me is the fact that, and, you know, at the base of 102 or 201, sorry, I'm dyslexic, by the way.
Yep.
Is not everybody wants to be looked at, but everybody wants to be seen. And this for me struck a huge chord, is because I get called an extrovert all the time. And I'm actually not really. I have a very large personality. And anytime I get told, like, oh, well, you're this and this and this, I'm like, you've never seen me. Actually, like, congratulations, you've bought a fictional character.
Right.
And so there's times I don't want to be looked at, but I actually want to be seen in this. And so this is very personal for me. Sorry, like, I'm going to make it all about me for a moment.
How dare you?
I know. Is that to be looked at is to be like an external source judging you. Some people do very well under that. Some people do not. They don't want to do it. Everybody wants to be understood. They want to be seen. They want to be fundamentally, like, handled as the person they are. And it's a very hard thing to actually achieve, because that involves trust, that involves asking, that involves communication and everything else like that, because you actually have to present what needs to happen or what you need to feel seen.
Right.
And so this one stuck out for me because this is a huge problem that I have. I struggle with this all the time because I present a very good character. I'm 100% like, great, I will give you something to look at, and then I feel very alone because I feel unseen. And it is a self-created bullshit cycle.
Well, I think that's part of. I think it's one of the things about in the SCA is when we have our personas. So yeah, you Araya are not an extrovert. Duchess, Her Grace Sir Helga, is a giant fucking extrovert, and that's the difference, I think. So you've created this larger than life persona out there because that's what you have to be.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be the knight. You have to be the pelican. You have to be the royal peer. Those are the stations that have been thrust upon you, whether you wanted them or not, and you have to live up to that.
Yep.
And so I think that's a common thing. Is we sort of thrust ourselves into these bubbles,
Goes on to the hero arc of no longer taking the donut.
Right.
Because if I'm not willing to ask to be seen, I'm actually not really worthy of being seen.
Right. Well, okay. I would argue that. You're still worthy to be seen.
That was a huge level of toxic bullshit that just fell out of my mouth there. I said that and it was like, oh.
Okay.
Oh, I just jammed my own toe beans into like the corner or something there.
Uh-huh. All right. So yeah, because regardless of the ask or not ask, the worth does not change.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the getting past being looked at to be seen?
I think that's actually the vulnerable and trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other arc of the book, is to be vulnerable and trust the crowd around you or the people around you allows you to be seen. You
right.
can be authentic when you can be seen as authentic or authentically seen when you yourself are authentic. So if you are just running around as a character, then you're going to get seen as that character because you're actually putting up the walls, you're putting up the barriers, you're putting up all that thing stacking in front of you to be like, this is what I'm putting out there. And then most people actually aren't going to work through that.
Right.
So you actually have to trust in general that you can then step through your own bullshit and be authentic. And then you are seen much more genuinely and much more easily. And people are going to weed themselves in and out of your life that way anyways, instead of like working all the way through the bullshit things. And then they get down to you and they're like, I don't really like this character. And you're like, this is actually me. So you can go fuck off now.
Right. So creating that separation, because we do it naturally, we can't help it. I think that's something that I've done less of, I think, in my life. I'm sure people would disagree, but I've always tried to be genuine and emotional in front of people and just open. But I mean, I'm sure I haven't at all. But how do you, from the thing you have to be in the SCA, you know, being this icon of whatever. Okay, because regardless, first I know, right? But no, because you know, because you have a white belt, you have the pointy hat, you have these things, like those things make you into something.
Yeah.
Because when somebody walks up who doesn't know you, doesn't know anything about it, and sees that, they instantly assume a thing about you, right?
Yes.
And that's just true. It's true of that regalia. How do you get past that? How are you trying to get past that so that you can be genuine while still maintaining the regality? And see this, and this is something that you and I had a fight with very early on in our relationship here, our friendship here. When you're like, no, I'm not your grace, you can't call me that. I was like, the fuck I won't.
Yeah.
Because that's important to me, right? So like, how do you find that balance? And I think, and you and I have found it now, and I still pick on you about it occasionally. You know, when we're in a fancy court thing, guess what? I'm using all your titles, and you can suck it. But how do you find that balance for, you know, the general populace to maintain that? I think that's a skill.
I stopped applying my self-cultivated fear to other people.
Ooh.
So, instead of assuming that by you using the titles, you were expecting a certain behavior pattern out of me,
right?
I had to reverse that. Those things, those titles, are a part of me, and they're what actually got me there.
Right.
So if I am unauthentically myself at any point in time, I'm actually lying to the populace about who and what I am. Right. And you can make assumptions all you want, but if I try to pre-guess what those assumptions are, if I try to act it out or shut it down or let my fear ride me in that point in time, what I'm doing is I'm actually breaking my own oath by lying. And I am now creating that character that I think that you think that I think I should be. Like, that's just a level of fuck. Yeah, exactly. It's a level of circular fuckery.
Right.
So instead, if I am authentically myself and I am a knight, I am authentically myself and I'm a royal peer and I'm a pelican. You want to know what? When there's a problem and somebody comes to me with a problem like, hey, I don't like this behavior out of you, or there's something else like that, instead of having to go through the walls of bullshittery where I'm just like, well, fuck, I fictitiously created this behavior because that's what I thought you wanted. Now we can actually just genuinely have a conversation about, like, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I'm uncomfortable about this behavior, I can say, well, shit, okay, let's sit down. Now you're talking to Helga. Now you're talking to Araya. Like, as a knight, this behavior is not okay. Okay, cool. Like, let's actually talk about that. And I actually found that by that ownership, I started getting less nervous about people using my titles, because I stopped trying to second guess how they were seeing me.
Right.
It also allowed me to put myself out there more often as authentically myself. And so when people meet me, they're just like, oh, you're Helga. I'm like, yeah? What's your impression? Because now I'm really curious. And it got me into a curious state. And I still, to this day, it weirds me out when people use my titles. And I realize that that's my own baggage train. That is 100% my own baggage train that I don't actually get to put on people. Right. If people use my titles in a derogatory manner, that's something I can directly confront now, instead of reinforcing that bad behavior. Like, but also I don't need people to use my titles either. So that's one of those things where it's just kind of that thing where if, like, people use my titles, I'm like, cool, thank you very much for the honor. Like, you can just address me this way. I'm perfectly happy however you choose to do it. You do it at your level of comfort. It's not actually about me at that point in time. That was a lesson that you fucking slammed between my ears and that I've been grinding on for the last 6 months. So that titles are not about my level of comfort or my use of them. It's about how other people are comforted by them or not. And so I leave it in their hands to do it, to use those titles as they would.
There you go. So I think that actually ties into the other half of what, so to get us back on topic on the book here. So the other half of her mom, so, and you mentioned it, was that she couldn't see her art. Mm-hmm. I think that, so there's another half of that is nobody could ever see the beautiful things I made because you couldn't hang them in a gallery. So we look at that same idea of putting ourselves in other people and sort of the expectations of people, right? And in what we put out, we're expecting certain results and whatever. And there's different perceptions depending on what the people are. So we've talked a lot about the different peerages and sort of the visibility of different ones, and so knights are more visible, therefore they're the better, more popular, blah blah whatever, right? But we forget about people that are making the ship go, right? So the pelicans, I think, are often the ones that are most, I'm going to say underappreciated, but are often ignored in our grouping, is people who are behind the scenes, just getting the shit done. And I think that relates to this as well, is the idea of, because they have nothing to put on the board, they have nothing to hang on the gallery. They have no, they're not out there with the shiny sword fighting the fight, right? That we forget that. And I think that's really a big thing for this for me, is being able to look at that and relating that back to that of we need to also remember, when we're talking about the royal peers and the knights and the pelicans and whatever, is that we also start looking for the people who are not those things, and remembering that both from this side to find those things, but also from the upper echelon of that, making sure that you're looking back and finding those people who are not getting the limelight, whose art, I'll put art in air quotes here, is not being seen. I think that's an important thing that we collectively can all do.
Yeah, agreed. Also, this is just like a weird thing that occurred to me, is so in this context, they talk about art being like a thing that you can hang and see. In the SCA, that's your renown.
Right.
Like, and that's, as an artist, like, as in almost any aspect, because fighting fades with time. Like, that's actually one of the things, is like, in 6 months, you won't remember a fight in 6 months. You'll remember kind of the details of a fight and everything else like that, but nobody's going to be like, oh my God, this 3rd round crown fight where these 2 unbelts went at it. Like, they're actually not going to remember that, because there isn't the renown there. Right. There isn't a name thing. And sometimes, that even happens with the knights, where you're out in 3, you're not really one of the memorable ones in the list.
Right.
But one of the things that ends up happening as time goes on and you get word fame, they'll still remember those fights, because now you're attached to something. Like, that renown is like your wall of art. And I think that actually happens in almost all aspects of the society. I agree with you that I think the Pelicans is probably the hardest, because it's almost all social credit renown. Right. And so what I would say actually out of this is, agreeing with you, is find the people that don't have that social credit yet. And when you have the social credit, lend out your social credit. Give them the social credit donut.
Right. Yeah. Take the donut, guys. Just take the donut. It's fine.
Oh my God.
The donuts.
We do have a Spite Sprinkles donut on the other show.
I know. We do. By the way, we are like 2 subscribers short of 100 right now, and I'm itching. So at the end of this, we're going to discuss some. I have some asks to make of you folks out there. So be ready for that.
Hey, I'm going to show you this. They all got printed.
Such good merch. You guys have done a stellar job with your merch. I am quite happy with all of it. I'm so impressed. I mean, like, you're on a T-shirt even. Like,
fuck you. I don't want to hear that.
All right. So, 208 is our next point.
208.
All right. I'm going to read this because I think this is a huge point. Anthony once told me, it isn't what you say to people. It's more important what you do with them. It's less important what you do with them than the way you are with them. I read that and put the book down. That was one of my, okay. So the short version of that is, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But it's also not how you say or what you say, it's what you do. So this has sort of 2 points. It's actions speak louder than words, and it's not how you say, it's what you say. Or it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Those are 2 points that I think are big for me, because, so for those who don't know me and haven't dealt with me mundanely a whole lot, my communication style is very weird and very aggressive. Especially when I am happy or sad or angry, I am aggressive. And I get you can't tell, I'm 6'5", 250 some odd pounds. I'm a big dude. So whatever I do is very large. I don't do anything small. It is always very big, which often then intimidates people when I'm doing things. So I've upset people. I've made people mad. I've hurt people and was very confused afterwards. Did not know why. But it's because of something I did or didn't do during that conversation, because I was excited. I was very elevated. And generally, because I am so big and I'm so loud, they hear anger. So that hit me, because it's a point I need to hear more often and need to be focused. Matter of fact, I was talking to Runa about this earlier, that I have to always check my communications and check to make sure that what I'm saying is actually being heard, and that what I'm saying is sort of timed correctly, so that it actually gets across.
Yeah. I like how you're still screwed up about this one. Like, this one is just, anytime you go in it, like, you're just like, there is a refrigerator box of fuckery to unpack there.
Well, there is. And like I said, I spent probably half an hour on this morning, because it is. It's something I've dealt with for 32 years now. And this is super meta of this, but when this happens to me, right? So I'll say a thing, and somebody says, "Oh God, why are you mad at me?" And I'm like, fuck, I'm not mad. What? And I have to recoil, right? So then I start processing back through, okay, what did I say? What did I do? What did I miss? And I had to come to realize and sort of accept that it doesn't matter what I said. It doesn't matter how I said it. It doesn't matter what I did.
Mm-hmm.
It matters what they heard and how they heard it.
Yep.
Right? Because there's two parts of communication. There's the sending and the receiving. I could send good all day, but if they receive bad, that's all that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be their fault. They could be in a bad mood. They could be in a bad place. It could be something, they could have just, been beat by their husband. I don't know. But that all that matters is how they perceive me in that 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough for me, because all I can do is change me, right? All I can do is focus on what I'm doing. I can't change how they're perceiving that. But I realized when I started sort of trying to track it, that when I asked, okay, what happened? And they tell me something, my first instinct is to be defensive. Oh, no, that's not what I meant, or no, that's not what I said, or that's not whatever, right? But it doesn't matter. I just have to accept what they said and what they experienced, because that's so Patrona brings up perception is reality, and that's their reality. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what my intention was, their reality is what mattered. And that's tough. That was tough for me, and that hit me.
I think you're going to say that is tough for you versus was tough for you, because you are very emotionally charged right now.
Yeah, my toe beans.
Toe beans. So I absolutely love this statement, and this statement hits me in 7 ways from Sunday. Like, it just beyond Take the Donut, I think this is one of the best things in this book. Right. Is that this is everything that you just said. And I go through some of the same stuff too, because I'm a very loud, boisterous personality. I mean, I run around with bright pink hair and I've got facial piercings. People are going to judge me,
right,
before they ever interact with me. But also, this is the thing that ends up happening with, like, I'm going to speak to some of the more shittier things that are going on in the SCA, because we said that we were going to tie this back to the SCA anyways. This is some of the stuff that ties back to breaking oaths or oath breakers. Mm-hmm. Of, you can swear up and down all day about something, and as long as you have the faith from the populace about it, they're going to believe you. Right. If you do not follow through with it, though, like, so you can say the mouth words, and then you better show up, and then you better do. Right. And a lot of the breakdown is that a lot of people have learned that you can say the mouth words, and there is no consequence to not doing. And so this is where it matters, is because the only way we really have in, like, polite society to hold people to this is just kind of by, like, withdrawing from them. Right. Like, there's all the jokes about, like, oh, the only reason, like, keyboard warriors exist is because they won't say it to your face, where you can punch them. You want to know what? I can guarantee most people that say that are making just as bad mouth words. They're not actually going to do anything about it. Right. Nobody's going to have the hard conversation. Nobody's actually going to act it out. And so at this point, what I would say is, like, this is actually applicable everywhere, is watch what you say, show up when you say you're going to, and then follow through with the actions, or reassess and start over from the beginning of this cycle, where you get there and you start to do the thing. And this is also part of that end statement of like, it's less important what you do with them than how you're with them. How you're with them is assessing what that person, group, or place needs in the now, and then reassessing what you say and what you do and how you apply it. That also is. So you can say stuff all day long. You don't have to stay on a linear path. This is a circular path that continues to rotate back onto itself. And so when you get there and you hit the assessment about what you're doing with them, then you can move forward. A very mundane example of this is texting a friend, showing up for coffee, and then putting your fucking phone down. Unless you get there and you text a friend, you show up for coffee, and then they've got their phone in your hand and you ask them like, hey, are we hanging out or are we breathing in the same space? What do you need right now? Do you just need breathing in the same space? Because sometimes you just want to be around a person, but you don't actually want to like hardcore interact. Like we're making eye contact the entire time. We are sharing the same cookie. This coffee cup is ours mutually. We are touching ourselves in every way possible. No, they could just be like, I literally just need somebody that I'm comfortable around. And pick up your phone and fucking text away. Who cares?
Right.
But that's really what I take away from this. And this is what we also need to do as peers, is we need to say, do, assess, and follow through. Or reassess and start the cycle over again. If we think about this as a circular cycle, it becomes something that feeds back on itself versus a linear cycle gets us stuck in behavior patterns.
Right. Yeah, that's I think that really looks at some of the recent, the last 6 months, whatever, of the actions of the knights. We've talked about the actions of both the actions of some of the knights that are bad, but also the reactions of the chivalry in general. Mm-hmm. I think we have to look at both those points, right? So we look at the action of the knights and the ones that have said, oh, hey, I fucked up, cool, whatever, right, and have recanted their things, and cool. All right, so you made a mistake. You said you were fixing it. Now where's your actions? And now are you actually improving to fix your thing? Cool. But then there's the reaction of the Shiv and how the Shiv has sort of either went against that or, have said, oh yeah, we're totally against these things, but then don't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. As a whole, I think that sort of sits to that is yeah, you can speak the mouth words, but until you walk the boot walking, it doesn't actually do any good.
Well, and until you take in the external factors of the boot walking.
Right.
Because that's also part of it. This cycle is not a singular person thing. This cycle has to account for everybody involved.
Right.
Like this actually goes back into like assessing a victim and making sure that you're dealing with their needs, not your own in the situation.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. So Runa put a quote up that was "Are you in the feelings phase, or are you ready to talk solutions?" Which because I asked her that this morning. So she likes to use Mount quotes against me.
I was about to say, because right now you really feel in the feelings phase about this quotes.
Yeah. Well, I think yes, except part of this show is we're talking solutions. The show is the solutions. Unfortunately, we have to cycle the feelings phase as part of the solution figuring out.
What?
I know, right? Being emotional on camera, how dare we? All right.
I mean, I've cried on camera.
That's true.
Like real tears too. It wasn't even like faking it. Like that day sucked.
Yeah. You've had a couple of pretty intense episodes. I'd say I've been enjoying it. Like I enjoy watching you suffer, Helga, but there's a difference in Anyway,
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
we can just like cut that quote out later and just put it without context and just.
I enjoy watching you suffer. I'm okay with that. We'll put it on Facebook. All right, 212.
212. This one actually talks about Bernie Brown, who I think is delightful and who I'm currently obsessing over, by the way. Cool. So don't be shocked if we end up reading her stuff too. And this goes into, so we're going to start delving into pieces and parts again versus overall arcs. This is a quote where it talks that neuroscience advances confirm that what we've known all along: emotions can hurt and cause pain, and they can actually cause like severe emotional experiences can hurt just as much as a physical damage.
Right.
Like our brain reads it the same in the same centers. So you're experiencing that same adrenaline dump. You're experiencing the same pain response. All those neurons are still firing. So break an ankle or get rejected by a boyfriend, same thing. So, and that's just, I just wanted to bring that up because it's actually an interesting thing is we tell people to get over their emotional experiences and dismiss them more than we tell them to get over a broken finger.
Right. Because you never say to somebody, I mean, I can't even say, I've been told to suck it up and put some dirt on it and get back in the game. So I can't say we've never told somebody to do that, but it is, you're right, it is less common.
Yeah. And so we've all, I mean, and we've all done that where your friend is like lingering in some pain and you're just like, can we move on now? And you're like, but we would never tell anybody that in a cast.
Right. Can you just start walking. It's fine.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I just wanted to bring that up is we must remember that when we're emotionally processing that we're going to hit those same pain centers, that those people still processing all those emotions are going to experience literally a trauma response to that emotional hit. And so please try to give them some of the same space and give them some of the same respect you would for a physical injury, because that will help everybody process through it.
Right. So to dig into that for a second, actually, because I was just thinking about not only the emotional trauma, I think we do the same thing with invisible disability stuff too.
Yeah.
So because I think it's because there's not a thing we can fix. So if somebody breaks their leg, you go, oh, okay, cool. We know how to fix that. We know what to do. We know the steps. We know the things. There's an obvious thing to fix, and there's an end point. Mm-hmm. Right? You do the surgery. You put the cast on. You do your therapy, whatever. Right? There isn't that for emotional trauma. There's not an end point. There's not that for fibro or other mental disorders. Like there's not an end point to those.
Okay. Also, I think that comes out of a lack of trust. Ready for me to touch toe beans?
Yeah, keep talking.
When we can physically see an injury on a human being, we go, well, they can't fake that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so I actually think there's a fundamental lack of trust. And I really will challenge anybody watching this that if you have a fundamental lack of trust about somebody having an emotional response, maybe you should look in the mirror about your own emotional responses and how you abuse yourself around them.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and that's honestly that right there, just to open that quote up a little bit there is if you look at somebody else if you make an assumption about somebody else, check yourself immediately. Mm-hmm. Because that assumption's coming from something. It is coming from some trauma, from something, it's the idea of projection. So if you don't trust your significant other or your friends or whatever, it's because you don't trust yourself, or you're not supposed to be trusted because you have done something to break that trust at some point.
I will challenge your wording a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
And I realize that this started off my own wording, but we've gone down this rabbit hole. Is trusting your boundaries. Because otherwise it turns into because sometimes there's reasons not to trust people.
Right.
But if you're having that response, you need to understand your boundaries and your own damage before you apply it to somebody else. And so that is still a trust factor, but making sure you understand that you trust yourself enough before application. Because if you don't trust yourself, so what I do is I treat myself like I'm a hypochondriac all the time.
Okay.
So, and then I apply that to other people. And so I don't trust non-visible injuries because I myself, when I am physically injured, will just be like, oh, I need to get over. I have a constant thing running through my head of oh, you're just being a pansy. You have no pain tolerance. You need to get up and keep going. I do the same thing if I'm depressed. I do the same thing. I emotionally abuse myself about injuries. And so I've actually extended more trust to other people because I understand how bad I get about myself. So somebody's like, oh man, I'm having a really down mental day. I'm like, sweet. How can I make room for you? Because I really hope you don't have the same thought processes going through your head that I do.
Right.
And so that's one of the things is by understanding my own baggage, I can actually apply more empathy to somebody else and give them better space because I know what my first response is. Well, they're probably just doing what I do. So, and if I applied that to everybody around me, I'd have no friends ever. Oh my God. Everybody'd be like, she's a cold asshole.
Right. But admittedly though, so 2 points. I agree with what you said about, yes, there are reasons not to trust people or to blah blah. Assumptions are correct, and generally all assumptions are made off of some data.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just assume out of nowhere. So if you see somebody carrying a knife, you can assume they're dangerous because they're carrying a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
They may just be a butcher going to work, but like, sure, we have trauma responsive. Guy with knife is dangerous. I get that, right? So yes, there's always check that. But I think that's the important part. As long as you make the assumption and then go, okay, why am I making that assumption? Mm-hmm. As long as you process that and verify it. So if I don't trust person because they have now broken my trust 17 times. Fair, cool. Do what you got to do to deal with that. But if I don't trust person because they look shifty, that's not like you can't immediately assume that, right? Mm-hmm. Or because their name is Bill or whatever. It's a certain ridiculous topic here. And I think there's a point about that later on with the trust is. I don't remember what it is. Neither of us marked it, so we'll talk about it now. So throughout this whole book and her whole art of asking thing is she's willing to sleep on couches and live with people and eat whatever, and she just lives basically off the kindness of strangers. It's part of her whole culture, and it's amazing, and it's something I embrace with. And like I said, I've talked about this before. I pick up hitchhikers. I'll help people. I've had people live with me. I don't lock my doors, and I'll say that live on YouTube. My doors are never locked. Any of my friends who know where I live know that. And is that dangerous? Yes. Have I had people walk into my house before that I did not want? Yes. I literally had somebody walk in and knock on my bedroom door, offering to cut my grass one time. That was a weird thing to happen. Yeah. He knocked on the back door. He knocked on the garage door. He knocked on the bedroom door because we weren't answering either in the other two, and he knew we were home. Yeah. The answer was no. I have not talked to this guy since, but whatever. But like he was a nice guy. He literally meant no harm. He was just trying to, hey man, your grass is kind of tall. Do you need it? Like whatever. He could have just easily killed me. Right.
Don't walk into my house. So Jess actually made a really good comment on Facebook. There's a difference between boundaries and biases.
Yep.
And that's key to know, and that's definitely a rabbit hole we'll have to go down at some point. But that is definitely boundaries are where like you build trust. Biases are a different thing, right. And you must understand them, especially in social situations.
I agree.
You also must understand both of those and how you apply them to other humans. Do we want to keep rolling on because we're like halfway through that?
216.
216. Oh, which is totally me.
Yep. It's all you. Yeah. You got the next. Oh, it's just listen. I've got a couple. So.
Oh, so this is the next one. Is part of trust is also forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot forgive, you can't actually trust, because then you can't ask. And so why I brought this one up is there's a little story about her having her ukulele. I can't say that word. Stolen.
Her ukulele. Different things.
Words are hard.
Yeah.
And so it was stolen from a gig, and she put it out on Twitter and said like, "Hey, I want this returned. Like, no, just give me my ukulele back." And it showed back up. It ended up being a set of drunken fans that had just like taken her ukulele, and they were like, "Oh my God, we're so sorry," and everything else like that. And then they asked her why she wasn't more mad. And this was a really key thing for me of you cannot ask for vulnerability and then get madder. And so this was a really hard lesson for me in life of people would start to trust me and then they would be honest with me and then I'd be mad about their honesty, which is bullshit. Even if it sucks and even if it hurts and everything else like that, when people become honest with you, they are very vulnerable at that moment in time. And what you are hearing, you may not like, but now you are through the damn barriers they have set up and seeing the real person that they are. Trust them. Like, because this is where you can actually, like, this is where most people end up, like, there's a huge rabbit hole about abusive cycles around this.
Right.
But we're going to go with the good example is that when somebody vulnerably trusts you when they screw up and tells you how they screwed up or comes to you for that, try to make as much space as you can for forgiveness so they can continue to give you that trust, because you would also want that in turn. And it takes a lot to wind up and start to like getting ready to ask for trust, because we're going to go back to the book. It's asking for trust. I am coming to you. I'm asking you to trust me, or asking you to forgive me because I did this thing and I fucked up. But I am trusting you that you will either give me forgiveness, or you will tell me that's a boundary, or you will tell me, nope, hard no, that's a deal breaker. And so both sides need to not get pissed.
Right.
Both sides need to not punish. They just need to put down their boundaries. And at this point in time, her boundary was forgiveness and like, walk on, just don't do it again. Like everything else like that. And to use a harder one, if somebody trusts you and says, hey, I cheated on you, that's where you get to choose your boundaries. They trusted you enough to tell you. Now you need to trust yourself enough to put down your boundaries and say, I'm sorry, we're done. But you can't go to punish them. You can't go to anger and punish them. So this is the thing about this, is trying to understand that your emotions in this can't turn into a negative thing for that trust. And it's really fucking hard and it's brutal. But also it makes a lot of the interactions much cleaner. And much more about like what you need in the situation. She just needed her ukulele back. She got it back. There was no reason to punish them. Somebody cheated on me. Peace the fuck out. I know we're not meant for each other. And then after that, there's my clear lines. Like, here's the line in the sand, motherfucker. Sorry, you crossed it. Peace.
Yeah, well, and I know when she brought that up, and so her initial response, of course, was anger, because her thing was stolen, and it hurt her specifically because not only was her ukulele stolen, it was stolen by her family, and her people, her group, the people who could have gotten to it, who stole it, were people that were close to her, that she was having this connection with. So it wasn't just like she was mugged in the street, or some random person just swiped it. It was somebody who she trusted who took it. So of course her initial response was anger, and her entire world crumbled around her for like 10 minutes. Like she recovered fairly quickly, at least in her description of it. But I think that's important. I think we have to sort of dig into that of when the thing happens, deal with the thing, cool, whatever, and allow that forgiveness. But also you can allow yourself to be angry. If that's what you need is the space to process, cool. Go be angry. Work that out for a second, and then come back. But don't be angry at the person, or don't punish them. I think so. I think we need to separate being angry or being upset and the punishing as two separate things. Because just being angry isn't a punishment. I'm allowed to emote. I'm allowed to be angry or allowed to be upset about that because you wronged me in some way. You're correct. I shouldn't punish that person. But I think those two things aren't necessarily the same.
I actually agreed. Also, I kind of wish that this story was further in the book, because there's a lot of things that build on this story of like the art of asking for forgiveness and the art of like either accepting or denying. Because that's what they were asking for, is they were asking for forgiveness, and she chose to give it.
Right.
Like, you can have somebody ask for forgiveness and you can deny that.
Right.
And that's actually what I was really trying to get at. And I realized that I just found much cleaner language for that.
Yep.
Is that, a person can ask, and that's what they were doing. That's the reason why this is in this book. I actually wish this story and the donut story were like way further into the text, because they're kind of like culmination stories about like the art of asking and understanding that you can take and you can give. Right.
I don't know. I think the sort of this is an editing discussion at this point. I think the placement is actually important because of the idea of trust, not the idea of the asking. So it's because there's a couple of threads that she weaves through this of different sort of points. I think that one also touches. It sort of is in the trust grouping, because there's a lot of trust stuff around either side. Because I think the next point is about the her getting written on in the show thing, and the trust in the idea there. So we'll hit that in a second. But I think that's really where it pings on, is she trusted people. People broke that trust, but then the trust was re-engaged because of action. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why it's placed where it is, because of that cycle. It ties into both halves. But
I accept this.
Yep, I'm okay with that. Good editing. That's actually I was reading the because there's really not a whole lot in the afterwards and the sort of there's a couple of people that edited that wrote some back pieces about Amanda and about the book. I enjoyed their writings in the back of this because of what they talked about, sort of they discussed some of the processes they went through and some of the editing and things. And I liked hearing about how she went through the actual book writing as well, because the people she trusted the most were the ones that were reading it and editing it for her, and like some of the people that are in these stories that some of these stories are not great and are not show people in their very dark of places. But I appreciate that that everybody involved in this project were as open about being involved in it as they were, and trusted that was the thing. So, all right. So it's 216. So 219 is actually mine. So this is actually a little point that I think we're just going to hit and then kind of move on because we've hit it a couple times. So this is to look at the idea about asking, but in language, in discussion. So we've talked before about having to have communication, you have to have a common language. So one of the things that Amanda and her husband Neil, and the famous author Neil Gaiman, which it just cracks me up that that's who that is they have very different love languages and very different approaches to dealing with trauma. So at one point in this, she has an abortion because of she ends up getting an infection and ends up having to have an abortion because she was pregnant and got an infection but didn't know it. And the medicine she was taking was really bad for the baby and whatever. And of course, that's a traumatic event. Well, during her traumatic event, her husband sort of just shut down and did not process with her. And that was weird for her because she's a very lovey, touchy, needs to be needed person, and he just gave up. And so a little later, she gets sick again, or he gets sick, and they're back and forth being sick with each other, and he does the same thing. And she finally stops and says, "What's the deal? Why are you mad at me? What's going on?" And it's because of his upbringing. He was taught to, when somebody was sick, to give them space instead of engaging with them, instead of giving them, love or affection, to give them space. So that's what he chose. That's what he did. And that's not at all what she needed. So they're discussing this, and the question of, well, did you ask? And I went, oh, ooh, all right. Sure. So I think the thing that brought to me was, you can't be mad at someone else for not knowing what you need. You have to be willing to ask. You have to be willing to make that ask for, and this is so we sort of look at two parts of asking. Hey, asking, I need a thing. I need help with a project. I need this or that, right? And then there's also the emotional. I need a hug. I need comfort. I need you to pay attention to me. Whatever. It's the same things. It's both needs. Both of them will reduce suffering. But you have to be willing to ask, and if you're not willing to ask, you can't be mad when the other person doesn't offer, or doesn't give you the thing. You can't just assume they realize that. Which gets into the whole, there's a what is it, the guess versus ask culture thing. What is that? Basically, you don't assume other people, or don't make other people guess what you need. Just tell them what you need.
Guess and check.
Guess and check. Thank you.
Fucking hate guess and check.
Right. Yeah.
And so this actually, amusingly enough, like this section always cracks me up. And I'll just speak to my personal relationship with my husband. Is he's always told me that I'm like the bluntest, most honest human being with him ever, because like he'll do something and I'll be like, "Can we please never do that again?" And he's like, "What?" Or like I'll need something and I'll be like, "I need this. Can you provide it? No? Can I go seek it somewhere else?" And he's like, "Well, there was no like running around the block with that conversation. Now, was there?" I was like, why would we run around the block with this conversation? And so like this part of the book always cracked me up because, especially going into my relationship with him, is I was actively working on this. Because I've been told a lot in my life I was too much. And so that too much turned into me not asking for anything that I needed. I assumed I was too much. So I stopped asking for what I was needing. And so I was reversing that process. And so now I just ask for what I need. I'm not attached to the outcome. It's just like asking for forgiveness. It is not just because I asked for forgiveness doesn't mean that I'm going to get forgiveness. Just because I asked for something doesn't mean I'm going to get it. But if I don't ask, that's 100% I'm not going to get it.
Right.
And that goes for emotional, physical, like any of that. If I don't ask, I'm not going to get it. He's not a mind reader. Like, we're not on some spaceship in Star Trek with like a goddamn mind reader that can tell me about my moods before I even fucking understand them. Like, if I don't ask him, never will I receive.
Right.
And so, and hinting doesn't work. I understand that I am thick as a brick. Hinting does not work. Tell me what you want, or I'm going to stare at you until you do. Like,
yeah. No, that's and that's part of that. You have to communicate, and then you can't get mad about it afterwards either. So so there's two parts. You have to ask in the first place, but it's an ask, and I think there's three ways to ask. You say, okay, can you give me this versus I need this. So if you're just saying I need this, that's an emotional. You're clearly emotionally invested in that, and it's I need this, or there is some negative thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I need you to hug me. Or, and this is the part that's usually not said, or I'm going to have an emotional breakdown, or I'm going to go cry in my room, or I'm going to go jump off a bridge, whatever, right? Whatever extreme response. Then there's the other half of, can you provide me with a hug? Can you hug me? Mm-hmm. If you ask it that way, you have to, you can't be emotionally invested. So this is something that I talk to Amber about a lot, is she will often ask me, can you make me a drink? And she's gonna love to hear her laugh about 10 seconds if she hears this in the living room. But the idea around that is I'm never gonna say no to her. Right. So it's an assumed thing of, yes, I can make you a drink. I'm physically capable of making you a drink, right? Will I? I mean, yeah, I will. I'm not gonna tell you no because it'd be an asshole move, right? And she's not necessarily even emotionally invested in it. I mean, yeah, she's thirsty, but like whatever. She can also get it herself. She is physically capable. It's a thing that bothers me when people ask can you do a thing that's we can do, like the other person can do. And I realized it was bothering me. So I looked into that. I sort of processed okay, why is that bothering me? And it's because of that. It's because I was assuming emotional attachment. And I didn't realize that until I dug into why is this making me mad? Because I realized one day I got to make a drink. I was like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm mad about it. Why am I mad about it? Like what? Like I had to dig. I was like, why am I angry about making her a drink? I don't care. Like, I paused my game. I went and make a drink, but it's because I was assuming emotional. I was assuming if I said no, that she would be mad.
Is that an emotional circular fuckery that we were talking about earlier?
And it's the same thing. So it cycles back to that of you can't assume other people's emotions. And you have to ask without expectation and all that. So yeah.
And I will challenge that occasionally you get to totally say, especially in your close relationships, I need, because that's dealing with the emotional bank. At that point in time, that's like when you say I would like, then somebody can freely give. If you say I need, you're cashing in a chit.
Right.
Like if you think of it like literally like poker chips, when you say I need, you're cashing something in. Like, and there better be emotional backlog in bank. Where first, if you say, I could use, I would like, everything else like that, it's a soft ask versus a hard ask. And there is a completely different emotional backlog on that. And we will totally get into that later, but that's a rabbit hole we would go down in another book.
Right. So, Zara just brought up the seems like I have a trauma response to expecting manipulation, and she's absolutely correct in that. It is definitely a trauma response to expecting manipulation.
Yeah. I have that same trauma response.
Yeah. And but I think that's the important part is that you and I both realize it and then can deal with it, because that's step one is admitting the problem. Step two is fixing it. So,
are you 12 stepping us?
What's that?
Are you 12 stepping us?
Just accept it. It's cool. But yes. Or in this case, 12. I think we're going to 12 book us. We're going to 12 book us. We're slowly walking through the process.
We might end up 12 books.
It's okay. We got time.
At the next point, we've lingered on this one for a while.
That's okay. We're at hour 6. We're good. We got 3 more hours to go. All right, 222 is the next one. All right, so in most cases, this is talking about. So this is the weaponized extrovert ideal.
Yes.
So this is totally off topic from what we were talking about, but in most cases, the successfully independent artist pairs with an advocate to shout the message down the street. Sometimes it's a record label, sometimes it's a patron, sometimes it's the best friend. So this is a thing that I think is important in the SCA is those of us who don't have the ability to ask, find someone who can ask for you. Or the weaponized extrovert in our case. So there are tons of people
that's turned into a usable term.
Yeah. It works out so well. And honestly, it applies to people who aren't necessarily extroverts either. Because it's also there's a theory of the sort of it's the mom syndrome, right? So you're not willing to go get the ketchup for yourself, but you'll go get the ketchup for your kid or for your friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll sit there all day wanting the ketchup, but you're not willing to get up and go walk across the restaurant. But if your friend Sally wants it, you're the first one to go get it, right?
Yep.
So that's the idea of you're generally finding people will do things for you that they won't do for themselves, and vice versa. And also, then if you're just not willing to ask, find somebody who is, because there's 100 of us out there that are willing to have platforms, whether they be YouTubes or fancy strawberry leaves. Those are platforms that people can use to achieve an end result.
All right, you ready for me to go off on this one?
Wait, come on.
Okay. So, risk is the core cost of human connection. That is what stuck with me.
Okay.
Out of all this, risk is the core. Risk is the core cost of human connection. I should have that fucking tattooed.
Yeah.
This goes back to no barriers, being authentically yourself, so you can connect, and that rolls into. If you cannot, you find somebody that can for you.
Right.
And so this goes into where I talk about loaning your renown to somebody else, or like backing somebody with your renown. This is your renown donut. Here you go. Is because I'm willing to risk that connection. Right. I'm willing to risk that authentic connection with somebody else. Well, somebody else cannot. I am the weaponized extrovert. For a lot of people, like almost all of my students, I am their weaponized extrovert until they learn the behaviors they need to grow into that. All of my students are naturally kind of extroverty anyways. Right. But I'm currently their one that can back that and give them more of a natural connection because I have less to lose. So I have less fear. I have more trust. And that is something that comes up, and this is a very simplified version of it. This is an incredibly simplified fucking version of it. But that is actually the core value in like taking on a student as a peer within the SCA is I am giving them the safety because I have more trust out there with the connections that I have. They are still building those connections. And so where they cannot, I can or will. So I can risk more than they can at that current point. My risk cost is actually less for that human connection because I've already built those bridges. I've already built those connections, and so there's less that I'm risking to get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think that connects into the idea of, I think it's one we got marked later, but it's the you can't ask until you have like you've built a relationship. Like so you can ask a stranger on the street for something, right? But if you asking them versus asking your friend of 30 years, those are two very different asks. One is much more likely to achieve the result you want. The other one could, but like the friend of 30 years is much more likely. Whether they can't give it to you, they can find somebody who can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's that I agree. That's the exact purpose of a peer in the SCA is teaching those skills, whatever peer-like qualities and whatever skill you're teaching, whether it's an art or a fighting or whatever. But it's also it's being that person to help them bridge that gap, to help them build their community.
Yep.
And connect to those people. And I think that's especially important when we're talking about I live in the ass end of my kingdom, and there's some of the movers and shakers. I'm in Lower Alabama. They're in Tennessee. I see them very infrequently, right? Well, now my peer lives in like Middle Georgia. So like that was one of the reasons. There's 100 reasons I picked her, but like I connected to her because her location was a benefit, honestly, because of where she was in the kingdom, where she is, and who people she knows, and it's a great thing to allow that. And it's one of the reasons, like, there are some peers on the coast that I could have tagged on to. I didn't for 100 reasons, but I specifically was looking away from them because of connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important thing, and that's something that, and it goes back to, I've done a talk on this about the importance of the SCA, or important the peers in the SCA, and the sort of the power imbalance there. It's why it's such a shitty system of having to of the ask of that relationship initially, is because that's the peer has such a power imbalance in that, and the soon to be associate, or the associate wanting to be is the one that can be hurt. So for instance, and like I said, there's a whole talk about
it. So this comes down to kingdom. This comes down to interkingdom anthropology, actually, because in some kingdoms the peer asks,
right,
and in other kingdoms the student asks, and that like varies from kingdom to kingdom super hard. I mean, it's just as bad as like what is it, the Sadie Hawkins dance, where like the girls have to ask the guys. And then like the next dance, I can't even remember the fucking next dance, where like the guys are supposed to ask the girls, and like back and forth. It's this weird human bonding rituals, like and traditions about it. And I will say that it's not a universal thing. And the only way to break that is to actually address tradition directly and just go the fuck around it. Like, don't wait. Like, rejection sucks on both ends. Like, peers get, and this is speaking to the power imbalance. The power imbalance there is a fictitious thing created by our social structures within the SCA. There are less peers than there are students. And getting rejected on either end sucks. And so all we're doing is we're putting applied fear into tradition that we are emotionally attached to in each kingdom. And so if we actually say, fuck the power imbalance and fuck this tradition, and understand that a peerage relationship is a lot like a relationship anyways, because there is a mutually agreed upon contract, there is some other things, and it's all very differing. We actually beat that power imbalance by breaking tradition and teaching all the peers, yes, you can approach students, and teaching students that, yes, you can approach all peers. And that rejection hurts when we are attached to the outcome. Instead of like actually having real fucking conversations about it and like doing a little bit of vetting beforehand. If we made taking like man at arms or man at arts or or person at arts, person at service, person at fighting, person in arms, because that should be gender fucking neutral anyways. If we made that a normalized thing where it's a little bit more like dating before marriage, I think that we would reduce that power imbalance exponentially across the board in all kingdoms. We now give power to the peers to approach students. We give students the ability to approach peers, because really a lot of that fear falls into, oh my God, I'm about to get in a relationship I can't sever. And that's also bullshit, by the way. But that's what all of our traditions speak to. And so now everybody's all bound up of like, I barely know this person, but I'm about to drop a marriage proposal. What if they're ugly underneath that veil? Like, that's how it is. So we have to break tradition like that by creating new tradition and creating much healthier tradition of like, have a dating phase, go out to coffee, get on a plane ride where you don't get to eat for 12 hours and then you get to see how they deal with servers, because that's one of mine.
I was going to say that was one of the things when you told me that initially, was like, that's a thing I like about you as your process, and that's something that I will take with me when I in the glorious day where I achieve the peerage. I think that's a really great point. Is finding that thing of the true person is important. So let me cycle back, because this is like I said, I did a whole coffee chat on this, so so go watch that if you're out there. The tradition isn't the problem, at least, and I'm speaking from Meridian and speaking from my personal experience. Let me be very clear about that. The power imbalance I talk to is not the idea of peers can't ask or students can't ask or whichever, right? It's if the student asks and is rejected, the hurt is more than if the peer asks and the student rejects.
I think that's emotionally perceived, though.
You're probably correct. I say that because it's hard. It's hard. Like I don't necessarily want to go down this rabbit hole right now. I don't have the emotional energy for it. But
this might okay. So hang on, Bricks. So why don't we vote that this is a coffee talk or this is a secondary talk? Because both you and I seem to have opinions from both levels on it, and we're way off the book at this point in time.
Let's cycle back to that one later. I'm good with
that.
that.
I would love to. So why don't you, in your notes, write down Araya and Kal will have a fucking debate over this bullshit.
Okay.
And we can have a whole separate show about the dating relationship between peers and students.
I like it. All right, cool. So next topic, 220. We're that one. 222. 225. Conditional love. So conditional love versus unconditional love. So this is the idea of, and I tell Amber this all the time. I tell Crystal this all the time. There is nothing that they could do that would make me not love them. I might not like either one of them in a period of time, but the love is unconditional. Conditional love is I will only love you if you love me, or I will only love you if you do X, Y, Z for me, right? That is toxic as fuck. Right?
That's not love.
What's that?
That's not love.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. It is. At that point, it's an arrangement. It's a barter. Which I mean, cool if that's your thing, I guess. But like, it's a trade. You're loving me because I'm providing you with a service. That's okay. That's sure, but that's not healthy. I'm not okay with that.
Agreed.
All right, moving on.
I like it. That one touches your toe beans also.
It does because I'm a lover. I love people. So and my emotion thing is weird. And I've talked about this recently, so it's in my brain that I have a weird separation of emotion and logic. Because I can separate the two. I can go over here and be logical, whatever. But I've come to recently find out that my emotion is sort of an all or nothing. I love her, I don't. And there's like sort of, I have 3 degrees. I have like partner, friend, and not. That's it. There's really not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of like difference in there. But like I feel about my friends the and I'll use love in air quotes here because I hate words. I am just as emotionally attached to my friends as I am to other, to other friends, to my lovers, to like the emotional connection is the same. It's a weird thing for me. Because so like there's people, so the way I judge my sort of level of relationship or level of like care is if that person died, how much would I be upset? Yeah. Or how much would it impact my life, right? So, if my neighbor across the street died, I literally wouldn't care. It would not impact my life. And that's shitty to say, I'm sorry, but like I wouldn't care. They've had zero impact on my life. I don't know the person. Like I know their name vaguely because we dealt with each other doing the hurricane stuff. But like they could die. They could be gone. I wouldn't care. If you died, I'd be upset. Would it affect my life a whole lot? No. It would affect me emotionally because you and I we become emotionally connected, and it would change something. I would lose this show. I would lose something I was getting from you. So it would affect me logically. But then, like, if Amber died or Crystal died, that's a giant affecting my life because now I've lost income, I've lost a housemate, I've lost a lover, I've lost a partner, right? That's a big thing. So that's my love ranking, and apparently that's weird to people, and I've been judged for it recently. So
I don't see anything odd in that.
Okay, good.
I love you. My husband delivered me tater tots with a fried egg on top.
Nice. You have he is the best husband. I'll give him that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I only have one husband because he's
right. And also that butt though.
Oh god.
That butt though.
All right. So
before we go off on that tangent,
pour me a pile of it. So one of the things is I'm gonna say I'm actually gonna go back to this one. I figured I was actually gonna roll over this one and then let it go. Conditional love is only if you love me, is what she says in there. I love you, you love me. It's a mutual, it's a mutual exchange. This is actually being attached to the outcome of what's going on. I get something out of it, like I am attached to this thing going a specific way. Also, this is not love, by the way. This is weird ass bullshit that, again, we can go down. Yeah, not love, it's manipulation. Agreed. But you also need to understand why that manipulation exists. And typically it's out of fear. Of I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, everything else like that. So you must prove. This creates damnation alley, and my favorite term ever is they must continually prove that they love you. And eventually they're going to live up to your fear of somebody's going to finally say, I've had enough, and draw a line. And you're like, oh my God, you don't love me. And they're like, no, I love you. I just really don't love this behavior.
Right.
And this behavior's a deal breaker. So there you go. And so this is the other one where unconditional love is that, I'll love you even if you don't love me. This is actually real love. And what I'll say is like where you've got your 3 levels, I've got huge gradients.
Right.
Of I will openly tell my friends I love you. I will say I love your face, I love who you are, everything else like that. And so I actually try to normalize the use of that that instead of being like I'm emotionally attached. I'm sorry, we have a short word for that. It's called love.
Right.
Like my brain makes little happy chemicals when I'm around you or talking to you. That's what love is. Love is a chemical process in the brain that we are addicted to. That's the reason why. Like, that's the reason why, like, new love is great, because your brain is just like, dump all the chemicals and the hormones. This is amazing. Which is the reason why we make new connections all the time. We are drug-seeking little thumb monkeys. But it's also awesome in that you should tell your friends that. We shouldn't hoard love like it's a fucking commodity that only... It's not a resource that's finite. Right. We experience love in so much. Time is finite. Love and experience of emotion is not. And so what I'll say is unconditionally love people for who they are all the time, because that's also going to allow you to ask them better. If you love who they are, if you understand who they are, you're able to ask. If you love them for what they can do for you, you're going to start fearing asking them, because now you're attached to the outcome and you're attached to them proving that they still love you.
Right. Or you're scared that they're going to stop loving you because you ask too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wow. Yeah, no, that's...
How are your toe beans?
I just want to stop there. Like, we have like 4 more sections. We're done. That's fine. I can't handle any more. No.
I mean, we do have almost 100 pages, so if you want to do this in 4 sections, we can.
Let's see. We're at an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. We've got... Let's see.
I'm down to 2 sticky notes, because basically the end of the book culminates one thing for me.
Okay. Yeah, let's. We've still got 8 viewers. Let's power through. I'm good with it.
Okay.
If it starts dropping off, we'll call it a day. We'll just watch the viewer count. If you guys are sick of us, just stop watching. I have to go back for a second. I really love this. I'm just gonna put that on the screen for a second and just not comment, because it's funny to me.
If I can adore Jess.
Zara is the best. Okay, so I just need to document that on the screen so it was there forever. All right. So 220, 235, I think was the next one. That would be one of yours.
Oh,
I think it's that whole section about the.
We're actually rolling into the final section for me of the investing and asking.
Yep.
And so do you want me to go on this big rant and then we'll go back to where it is? Because basically I can close my book at this point in time.
I am at your leisure.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go, I'm just going to go off for a minute and then we'll go back from there. This entire book culminates into, to be able to ask, you must culminate a crowd you can ask from and faith in yourself. Right. And then you must maintain it. Right. Being able to ask isn't something where, again, it was mentioned earlier in the show, you can't just walk up to a stranger and be like, I need $10. They're going to be like, fuck off. That's how the world is. One of the things that this book rounds up to is because really it's about her Kickstarter that hit over $1 million and everything else. She was the first one on record to do that as an artist. There's a bunch of stuff, jerk, all Amanda Palmer. Final takeaway from the book for me is that by maintaining a human connection, by being authentic and human with those around me, it gives me a better way and a more authentic way to ask for what I need from that group. And it depends. Like it could be just a moment in time where like I just need a like on a photo. I like it's maybe gonna make me feel a little bit more valued by a like on a photo for some stupid reason today. But like there we go. And then, but if I haven't created those connections, I can't ask for that.
Right.
And same with help. And so, and this is where it rolls back into the SCA for me. That hero's arc, you are not alone. You have to culminate and create those connections between other humans so you can continue to ask to grow and improve. There is no such thing as a loner shark in this. Eventually, you'll be forgotten. Doesn't matter how good your renown is and whatever given thing is. If you're alone and you continue to single yourself out as alone and you don't create connection, you actually don't create renown. You have no way. You cannot ask people to carry your stories on. You can't ask people for help because they don't know who the fuck you are. They only have an idea of who you are and they have no way to connect with you. And so this is in the SCA. This is one of the things that I'm working on, and the reason why I'm bringing it back to both the book and basically the topics of this is in the SCA, especially over the last couple of years, I've tried to be authentically myself. I am a little wild, savage creature that also has mediation training and is willing to sit down and talk with you about like, hey, that behavior is not okay, or I will listen to it if you call me on a behavior.
Right.
Because it gives me the ability and it gives me a moment to connect with somebody. Like I could want to go party and everything else like that, but I will sit and connect with the person because it gives me that connection. And later on down the road, I could say like, hey, cool. I'm throwing this weird Between Two Peers show up with like one of my besties, and she's going to go touch all her connections, and I'm going to go touch all my connections, and then all of a sudden we have 100 people watching the show. And so, but that's one of the things is we have to remember that by creating those connections, and this is where you need to understand that it's a little selfish. You create connections for your own safety, but you must do them in an authentic way without being attached to the outcome. Right. And that's a culmination of the book for me, is that she's actually done, Amanda Palmer has done some stuff that was just like, that was really dumb. You actually have to learn how to connect with people because sometimes you ask and you ask wrong. Right. And all of a sudden people are like shitting on you on your Twitter or bouncing off you on Facebook or anything else like that. And they're giving you the opinion. But when you create authentic connections, when you ask, those people that are there for that connection can then respond in a way and you can hear it for good or bad. Right. But that's one of the things that I took away from this book is that by being open and honest, when I ask, those that know me can then respond. And if I continue to try to be a loner and a fictitious character, I'm going to die the fuck alone because I've never created the ability to ask.
Right.
I've died on my own lack of ability to trust other people.
That's okay. So that's interesting. And I mean, so and obviously you've been successful at that. I mean, the viewership of your show alone is enough to prove that, and the merch and the again, did I mention your face was on a T-shirt? How crazy is that? I have to keep digging it. I'm gonna get one of those shirts. Like when we meet, I'm gonna be wearing your face. It's gonna happen. You're gonna love me even more for it.
The first time I actually see a shirt on somebody, I'm probably gonna lose my shit.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you will. Yeah, I actually, it's like I have no comment because I'm like, yeah, you're that all of that. So the book has a really cool analogy. It talks about growing bamboo. I think that I didn't realize that as a thing. So I've seen bamboo growing in Alabama, and it's really shitty and weird, and like whatever. It's like sort of typical bamboo. But the bamboo that's grown in Japan and in China or wherever it's grown in the Asian countries is like 30 feet tall in tree trunks, and it's a very different thing. But it's because of how they cultivate it. And it's how they grow it, and it grows for a few years underground and is cared for and cultivated. Like there is no obvious response. But then once it breaks through the first time, then it's 30 feet in a day. Yeah. And they cut it down and it's 30 feet in a day. And but it's, but you have to put the 3 years of effort or the 4 years of effort into it first, and then you get the result. So I think that's and that's hard. And I will admit, I'll admit this freely on camera. When I first started doing shows after Between Two Peers stuff, and I was like, oh, cool. They're working. Between Two Peers is great. S Nights is great. All these things are great. And then I had my first couple shows out for like my Witch Play Wednesdays, and I was getting like 3 and 4 viewers, and I was like, huh. That's a thing. All right, what am I doing wrong? So I start looking at it, and I realize, so it's exactly what this is. I don't have the people, right? I don't have the renown. I don't have the word fame, that's built off of that. Because I've only been playing for a year or back for a year now, right? So I know a lot of people, but I don't know nearly as many as you do, as Tulia does, as Carius does, as whatever, Kikichi. I was like, I can't not mention Baby Ninja.
Yeah, I mean, Baby Ninja has been like, our tech crew is insane. Like, I love them. And what I would actually say is I would challenge your renown with cultivated relationships.
Right.
And that's a word change choice that I would use, is because you can have very little renown in the society, but you can have very deeply cultivated relationships. And those very deeply cultivated relationships, one of the things that Amanda Palmer talks about is like the reason why she responds on Twitter all the time, the reason why she creates connection, the reason why there's all this thing. And this is going to be my weird fucking soapbox. Is cultivating relationships also means maintaining relationships.
Right.
There's a reason why we have a Between Two Peers Discord server. There's a reason why, like, I try to make sure that we responded within 24 hours on the Facebook page. I try to make sure that we're responding to all the YouTube comments and everything else like that, because that's continuing to touch and maintain those relationships, even from afar. It is giving people that connection, and that connection then feeds in other people. So they say, like, oh my God, there's this thing going on. It's like, actually, amusingly enough, that's what we try to do with Meet and Beat is, I try to make sure that we were constantly pushing Meet and Beat, but also when people would ask questions, they would get answers to the questions. Right. Even if I was just like, the information is posted right here. Never responded with the information is posted right here, because now that person could take it as belittling.
Right.
Cool. Here's the information. Here's the quick resource. Here's this, here's this, here's this. And so you're touching and creating those connections and making people want to continue to connect. And that's how you then crowdsource. That's how you if you're trying to crowdsource for somebody that doesn't a squire that doesn't have a helmet, you're not crowdsourcing for that squire. You don't use that squire that hasn't created any connections name. You use Duke so-and-so's squire doesn't have a helmet. And so we are crowdsourcing for this helmet. We are doing this thing because now we're using his connections, not the squire's connections.
Right. Yep.
So.
That's. Yep.
And renowned connections are very close, by the way, but there is a difference.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I think the renown is the personal, the connections or the connections, and one will feed the other and vice versa. But they are not immediately it's sort of like two beakers of the same thing. It's like, they are connected together.
Mm-hmm. And this is the reason why also, if you're an introvert, get yourself a weaponized extrovert. Right. They will help create connection for you. And then you just have to help maintain those connections. Right.
Which is, I think, which is sometimes just as hard, honestly. Like I realize I'm good at making connections. I'm not good at maintaining connections. That's something I've determined about me, is just I have people I know that I can call on to do things, but I don't maintain those connections as well. So after 10 years, yeah, I still know that person. They're still my friend on Facebook, but if I called them tomorrow and said, hey, can you come meet me to the airport? Would they? Probably not, because there's been no connection. There's been no maintenance. But I've got a buddy of mine that I see, every other day because he works at the grocery store I go to, and I stop and talk occasionally. I don't hang out with him anymore, but if I called him tomorrow, he'd be there. If he, so there's a difference.
That's also rolling into, though, if you don't ask, you won't get. And so even some of those old connections, if you reached out to them, may still do it, but you have to be ready to ask.
Oh, true. Agreed.
Just to roll it back to this, Yep.
All right, so I have a couple of more points, and we're doing good on time. We're going to hit a 2-hour mark. That's okay. All right, so we've talked about trust a lot, and trust is a huge thing, and it's sort of aside from the art of asking, but it is, you have to have trust to do that. But there's a point in this that to tie into the story from the book, she's in one of the shows, she strips down naked and lets people paint on her, write on her, or whatever. And it's something she started doing during her shows because she trusts. And it was perfect and all going fine. And then one day it didn't go well. And she was essentially sexually assaulted by a drunk fan And that was a big deal for her. And she played it off and whatever, but then later on she's like has this breakdown about it of, should I ever trust people again and this whole thing. The quote that she says that was like, that's the realest thing I've ever read, was, if there wasn't a real risk, then it's not real trust. So if you're locked in a room by yourself forever, there's no risk of being hurt because you're never interacting with people. So you can say you trust people, sure, but you're not really trusting them because there's no risk. You have to be willing to have a risk to assume trust. I think that's a huge thing, and it's sort of hard to process. Like I hear it, and I'm trying to come up with like I'm trying to like break it apart, but it's such a weird concept. So, what you got?
What I got is, one, this can be used by abusers, just so you know.
Oh, sure, okay.
So, don't let this turn into a cycle. This is one of those things where you apply trust, and once it's violated, you remove trust, i.e. The sexual assault story.
Right.
Like, you'll never trust them to stand next to her, but one of the things is she's not going to apply that distrust to other people.
Right.
That's the thing she walked away from, is so like, I should never trust people again. No, I should never trust those people again. Right. And so that's one of the things is, if you do not risk trusting somebody, how can they reach to it? Like, how can they do the thing? Once they prove you wrong or right, then continue to go from there. Data points. Like, and this is not turning into like you have to prove that you're trustworthy. This is, I'm going to trust you, and then when you violate it, peace fuck out. Or when you rise to it, cool, great. This again is being attached to the outcome. And so if you are not willing to extend trust to other people in situations in small or large ways, how can you then actually be authentically yourself with them?
Right.
That's actually what I take away from this is, I, in a situation, need to trust the other person that I'm with. Otherwise, all they're going to get is a caricature of me, because I'm now behind the scenes calculating every way that I shouldn't trust them. So I should just manage the situation.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that it's really hard to do, because we naturally don't want to trust people. So many of us are taught not to trust people.
Right.
Until it goes wrong. You find small ways, and then you go from there. And so it's a work up and a build to it. It's not like just like how Amanda Palmer trusts people. I am not capable of.
Yep,
like,
good, thanks. Yeah.
Will never be capable of. I will never stand in a crowd with a handful of markers and say, draw on my naked body. Go fuck yourself if you ever think I'm going to do that. However, trusting somebody to hand them my address so they can come pick something up for, an SCA camp. Yeah, whatever. Now you know where I live. I don't give a fuck. Trusting people like, cool, great. I'm in a crowd of guys and we're going to go walk around campsites. Yep, we're good. Like, there's a bunch of stuff where you learn the level of trust. And this is what I would call the applied level of trust and boundaries. Right. And as long as you know your boundaries, you then know what applied level you can give somebody without them having to prove that it should be there.
Right. I think the important thing that you said in that, at least to me, there's a couple things, but like the idea of and this goes back to the idea of all men or not all men, not all women, not all knights, whatever, not all insert person here, right? Mm-hmm. You're correct. It's not all men, but there's enough of them out there that there's now a risk, right? Mm-hmm. It's not all knights that are the problem, but there's enough knights that are a problem now that it's a problem. Mm-hmm. But you have to default to not. You always have to default back to the no. Okay, that person hasn't done that. Yes, I should be aware of the risk. Because risk aware is important, and I preach that in BDSM stuff. Risk aware, because the shit those things are risky, but as long as you're aware of the risk, it's cool. Mm-hmm. So be aware of the risk, but trust first, and that's tough. And I get that, and that's me speaking from being the male, being the white guy, being the privilege. I get that. It is much easier for me to trust than it is for somebody else. Yeah,
that's from the shit.
Right, so I get that. So, but I think that's something I can do. It's something I can give back. At least I hope I can exercise that privilege to trust more because of that.
There's possibly a different way to put this. And she puts it, is trust the connections you've created and your ability to create more. Is you have to risk a little bit to create a connection, and then from there, so it's like a tiered system. It's not like one of the things that how she writes, she kind of rates from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100. Like it's either you don't trust somebody or you trust somebody. Like there's these things. Versus really, it's more like a stair-step ladder, at least for me. And I'm just going to speak for myself because like some of the stuff that you just described, I'm just like, hard no. But it's a stair-step ladder thing. And so like the connection I create with somebody, I'm going to trust that connection until I need to adjust that connection. And so I'm not going to blindly trust a stranger. Like that's not in my nature. Like that's just not like blindly couch surfing the way she does. Like not so much. I would probably blindly couch surf within the SCA actually. But just like in general population, hard no.
That makes sense because there's a like-mindedness, at least somewhat of a like-mindedness there. So it puts you on contemplating.
That's actually the thing. SCA, first level of created connection. So that's the very bottom rung of that ladder. Is there is a created connection there? We are a part of this society. We are a part of this group. And then there's like the next applied ladder rungs. And so that's where I would say is like without risk, you can't trust. But also in that, you apply the trust that you have with the individual and let it run its course. Instead of like taking one individual and fucking up that entire ladder.
Fair. Yep. No, I like that. That's an interesting way to put that. I like that. All right. I have 2 points, and then I think no, I got one more. Okay. So this is just a point. Seeing each other is hard. Full stop. I think that's seeing each other is hard. And that goes back to the seeing each other is hard. Because when we truly see each other, we also want to help each other. I think that's the thing too. When you actually see somebody, you want to help somebody because, and this is, so to speak to my spirituality and sort of my general philosophy of life, we are all one, we are all connected, we are all the same person. We're all just manifestation of the same being. It's very Buddhist. It's the thing I sort of believe in is that me hurting you is hurting me. And so my helping others is helping me too. And that's because I try to, as much as I can, see other people. I like the thing from Avatar, the blue people, not the airbenders. Their greeting is basically, I see you. That to me is like, that's it. So if you ever watch me, anybody's out there in the SCA, you'll see me when I bow or when I, reverence to people, I do it differently depending on who it is. If you ever see me touch my forehead and do this, and it's because it is somebody I know and I see. It is a connection I've established with that person. They don't know it, and that's the first time I've ever admitted that in public, but it's a thing I do. I didn't honestly realize I was doing it, but it's because of that movie, actually. Apparently I am a blue hair, or I'm a blue weird tail thing. So the other part about that is, and this I think is something, so I've never been a peer, I've never been a royal, I've never been in this situation, but I've seen a lot of people who are in stations, and you and I've talked about this already, that not want to accept their part in this in the play, right? We all have our parts in this play, we all have our roles. So she's talking about the as she became more famous, people were more willing to buy her coffee. The baristas were willing to give her free coffee, right? She no longer needed it. She needed it when she was the broke college kid standing in the square as a statue. She doesn't need it now that she's Amanda Palmer. But the accepting the coffee is a gift to that person because of her elevated station, right?
It's the same as allowing you to use titles.
It is. That was the one for you, but yeah, I know. But I think, but so it's not just so. And I brought that up just for you, but it's I've seen it a lot with people not wanting to accept gifts. So actually, I'll speak to this. The Baron and Baroness from the group I'm in, they're bad about this, and it's something that bothers me. So they're my Baron and Baroness, right? They are the symbol of the king and queen. They're my connection to the crown. They're in the drama. They're my liege. they won't let us carry their stuff. They won't let us set up their pavilion. Like they literally will. Like the Baron fights with his squires because his squires want to polish his armor for him. They want to do the squirely things, right? He won't let them. And there's been conversations about that. Like I'm like, but we want to do this because it's part of the drama that is the SCA to me, you know, because that's the gift. So it's not you're a famous person now. You're the peer, you're the royal. Doing that, being that for somebody else is actually a gift to them and not the other way around. Yeah, I'm giving you a present. I'm doing a thing for you, whatever. But it's actually allowing that person to play. It's allowing them to find the thing. So yeah, I think it's a really neat point that a lot of people need to remember as they move up. And it's something that you guys talk about on Changing Peers a lot, in the West Kingdom specifically, is the idea of that a lot of the nobility stuff gets kind of tossed aside or gets ignored, or you guys are more blasé about the nobility.
You're pretentiously unpretentious.
Right. I actually so something came up Friday, and I've slept since then, so I don't remember what it is. But Tulia brought up something about a problem that she had with something that was going on, and I went, well, it's because you guys are pretentiously unpretentious. It's because you guys don't care about the nobility. Like it was a thing about like it was supporting the crown. People weren't supporting the crown in a thing, but it's because I think part of the culture you guys have established is the crown is no longer this icon. It's become less. I think that plays into that. So it's like you can't have both. You either have to have everybody's equal and you just have a shiny hat today, and we're all being equals, or you have that's the queen. And the queen gets treated like the queen, even if the queen doesn't want it. You can't have both of those things, you know.
That's another like cultural sticky note we might have to like have a show.
Oh, it was the guard, the discussion around the guard. That's what it was. Yeah. So yeah, I think that maybe the thing we saw it because I think that was a point I was like, yeah. So yeah. So remember, so Kal's opinion is if you're out there, if you're a royal, if you're a peer, guess what? Suck it up. You got to deal with it. Be a peer. All right, my last 2 points. Actually, no, that's 3 or 5. Oh, okay. So my father always told me that integrity is doing the right thing, even no one's watching. Right? I was always told that in choices I make, assume my grandmother is sitting behind me. Because my grandmother was the sweetest little old lady. She was the most Christian, most God-fearing woman, and would give the shirt off her back. Amazing person. So I was always told that every decision I make, when I'm looking at moral things, make sure she was standing behind me. Which is creepy if you think of some things and whatever, but we won't go into that. So Amelia was talking to I think it was her ex-boyfriend, who also did a statue thing at one of the living statues. And he said at one point he was they're out there in whatever, and of course the rain comes through, and it's Boston, so it's one of the things that rains 5 minutes and it stops. So he had like a threshold of if it rains for more than this amount of time, he'll get down and go inside. And one day he just didn't. He stood in the rain in his thing and said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to be here. And just stood there for some period of time in the rain. And the rain finally stopped, and then people came out like in droves around him and gave him money and talked to him. And the idea was, he said, for the rest of his career, people occasionally came up to him and said they had seen him in the rain. That thing, him being the thing, even when no one else, even when he assumed no one was watching, because everybody was inside, that was impactful. So that to me has nothing to do with this book, in my opinion. That was a complete tangent, but it's your actions have impact, whether you know it or not. And it may that one thing you did, that one little tidbit, that one thing you did in court, that one thing you said affected somebody. It did something somewhere, and that's important. And remember that, good or bad, or
that's
good
creating connection. That goes right to the book. It's just creating connection.
Right. Well, agreed. But it's more of a you have to remember you're creating connection even when you're not creating connection, even when you're not actually doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're by yourself in the middle of the woods, peeing on the hay bale, somebody's there. Somebody sees that. Somebody knows you're doing that. Somebody's to understand every action you take has a consequence, good or bad, and it's seen. So always try, and the point is always try to do the good so that others see it, and others are inspired by it. And that's a little egotistical, I guess, but it's do the good for others, I guess, is my take on that.
So rounding this up,
yep.
What is your 2-sentence takeaway from the book?
Be willing to trust so that you can ask and get off the nail. Yeah, the get off the nail is probably the thing that will stick with me the most. Because I've always been a trusting individual. I've always been one willing to ask. I guess I didn't understand until reading this that others didn't do that. But then I also realized, looking back, that whereas I'm willing to ask, I'm not always willing to ask the right way or ask for the thing. And I also, the other thing I realized is I also offer and try to do when other people don't want it, which I've realized is a problem. Because whereas you have to ask and you can ask and you can offer, but no is still an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I think the idea of take the donut or get off the nail, it's the same thing. There's literally the same statements. One is reward driven, one is pain driven, but it's the same idea. Just take the donut. It's okay. Just get off the nail. You don't have to suffer. Yeah. What about you?
Authentically create connections without fear so you can take and ask.
That was way more poetic than mine. But yeah, no, I like that. Authentically create connections. I think that defines the SCA though. I think we can talk about medieval stuff all day. We talk about the fighting and the feasting and whatever, but it's authentically creating connections. And those people who are successful either do it through, treachery and backstabbing and whatever, and that success is fake, in my opinion, and is often short-lived, or they do it through authentically creating connections. I think that is the most important thing. Is you can be the best fighter, you can be the best artist, and you can be the best, organizer, but if you don't authentically create the connections, you're not going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I have a side note on this because my brain just went, tater tot. Also, have a thought. One of the things that she brings up in the book, like gently over and over and over again, is that we shit on artists because they, especially when they work in trade versus working in monetary connection. We don't understand trade connection. Like we live in a society that is monetarily, we are capitalists. We are little capitalists. Yeah. And the SCA removes that for the most part. Everything is trade. Everything is barter. Everything is that authentically created connection, which I think is the biggest part of the SCA and why we all love it so much and why we're battling to keep it. Right. Is that this entire book can be culminated in our society as a place where we stop exchanging goods for money and we start exchanging information and people and experiences. You can couch surf across the U.S. You can camp and crash in spaces. You can crowdsource things. You can do so much within the SCA because within the SCA, we teach each other to ask. We just tend to forget a lot of the times. And so that's my big, my SCA takeaway from the book is continue to be authentically yourselves within the society and understand that we are trading in connection, not in dollars.
Right. Yeah, that's legit.
That would be my tater tot thought of the night.
And I quote, tater tot thought of the night. All right. This has been a lovely 2 hours, and this has been a great book. And I'm going to need about a month to now decompress from this book because you have touched all the toe beans. Yeah, All right.
I was about to say, you want to go for lighthearted for the next one, or like?
Nah, let's keep digging.
This is fuck.
Yeah, no, let's just keep digging.
Okay.
I think what I want to do is let's give me a couple books and let's put up a poll.
Fuck yeah, I'm down for that.
And let's see what the top thought. Yeah, let's put a poll and see what people want, because I think that'll be a good thing, because then we have a regular viewership now. So let's.
You can totally put up any poll as top thoughts.
Helga's top thoughts. Top thoughts.
That's from Radar. She's fucking amazing.
Yeah. I'll still up on the screen. There you go. Top thoughts. Cool. All right. So I did say I was gonna put out an ask. So this is Kal being vulnerable and asking here. All right. So you guys have been watching us for 2 hours now, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in. This is now actually, I think, the most watch. There are 11 people watching us, Helga. 11. You have 100. Shut up. You have 100 watching you. Granted, you're often drunk for those a lot of times, so it's different. That helps. But a couple things. So one, please go like, subscribe, share the page. We are like 2 subscribers shy of 100. Or at least we were earlier. I checked. I got a couple pings earlier, so we may be there now, because we have giveaways. So Helga has offered merch from Between Two Peers when we had 100. So that's coming. Get us there. So share it to your friends, invite other people, get people watching the show, because I think this is amazing content. At least I think it is. I'm amazing, so other people should think I'm amazing. But we have so much good stuff coming up. The other thing of this is next week I'm going to be relaunching my Patreon. I will say this. So I hate being a capitalist, and I hate money. Money's stupid, and I hate it. And if I could just barter system my way into making this function, it'd be better. But YouTube stuff is expensive. And this StreamYard stuff is expensive and it costs money, and websites are expensive and cost money. So I'm putting Patreon back up, and I'm going to relaunch it. And I would love for all of you to at least share and like it and go look at it and help support this channel so that I can keep doing this, because I'm unemployed and stuff's expensive. That was me being vulnerable for a minute. Everybody good now? Are we done looking at that?
I like how you took your toe beans and you were just like,
it's going to hide them under there. So yeah, so that's that. So I'll probably do that like Monday, Tuesday-ish, whenever my social media manager actually get that put together. So
hint, Kal, fill out the merchant's commercial form for Between Two Peers, and we can pimp the show and the Patreon at the same time. And cough, my show.
Okay. So I haven't done that because it was merchant specific, and I was told
we're going to open it up to other shows.
Okay. So yeah, I actually talked to Katrina about that when it first came up, and was told so I will do that. I will happily put a thing in. I'll even make my own commercial, because I have video editing things.
You can literally just send us a fucking commercial. Please do that.
All right.
And so my ask is actually going to be to the audience. If you have merchants or other shows out there that you think should have a commercial in Between Two Peers, we're creating connections. We would love to host other shows' commercials. We would love to host merchants. We would like to help out SCA Connections and Red Fair Connections to make sure that they are getting the airspace that they deserve. So please, I have a form. You're welcome to message me. I will send you the form, send it to them, tell them fill it the fuck out, and they get a commercial.
I'll post it on the channel. I'll just throw it out there on my channel too, so it's out there. Yeah, because I sent it to my peer earlier, because she's a merchant, so you should hopefully get one from her. So awesome. So guys, thank you all for coming. This has been amazing fun. I admit this is gonna be a busy week for me. This is now one of 5 times I'm gonna be on camera this week, or rather doing StreamYard stuff. So this is like the start of hell week for me. But we started it off right, and I'm happy for that. So thank you, Helga, as always, for doing this, and I look forward to the next one.
Yep, I look forward to the next one too. We'll talk to you soon.
Guys, this has been Kal and Helga in Kalbur's Corner. All right.
Have a good night.